Dragons, flying, fire breathing lizards, they're back. And we're going to talk all about them. In Game of Thrones, we followed Daenerys Targaryen and her three dragons, chief among them being Drogon. We got to see how powerful they were and all the destruction they were able to cause. And man, was it a whole lot of destruction. But how could Drogon compare to the other dragons all through Targaryen history? In House of the Dragon, we're being introduced to some of the most important dragons in history, like Caraxes, the Bloodworm, the fiercest of all the young dragons. So, Drogon versus Caraxes. Who's going to come out on top? Who's bigger? Who's stronger? Who's more powerful? Who to win in a fight? Let's get into it. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to Danco with the notifications on. We always really appreciate the support. So let's start out with talking about the newcomer to the battle arena, Caraxes. He's the dragons ridden by Prince Daemon Targaryen, but that wasn't actually his first rider. The first rider was Aemon Targaryen, Prince of the Dragonstone. He was one of the fiercest dragons of the younger generation, earning the nickname the Bloodworm because of his blood red scales. Caraxes was also no stranger to combat. He fought in the Fourth Dornish War, when Caraxes, alongside two other dragons, descended upon the fleet and destroyed it all, burned it all to smithereens, and didn't even suffer one loss. That's pretty impressive. He also went on to go to Tarth, where there was an invasion of pirates. While Caraxes was great and fierce and burned up a whole lot of dudes with his fire, he also lost his rider in that fight. Aemon Targaryen died after being hit with a crossbow, and so Caraxes was riderless until Daemon Targaryen claimed him. And then there's Drogon, named after the legendary Khal Drogo, Jason Momoa, Aquaman himself. Yeah, that's a pretty great namesake. And Drogon really lives up to the hype. He lives up to that name. Drogon is immensely big and immensely strong. He's the largest out of Dany's dragons, was the true crown jewel, and essentially grew from the size of a small kitten when we first saw him to the size of a large whale by the end of the series. It was said that Drogon's wingspan stretched from 20 feet from tip to tip. He's easily the strongest of the three dragons, strong enough to demolish city buildings and blast down city gates with his dragon fire during the Battle of King's Landing. And it's this size and just his raw power that leads many people to believe that Drogon is the reincarnation of Balerion the Black Dread, the largest and most powerful dragon to ever exist. On the other hand, Will Caraxes was never really described as a particularly large dragon. He was a fierce dragon, a powerful dragon, sure, but never seen as a really big one. In fact, he's only half the size of another big dragon, Vhagar. So yeah, Drogon is bigger. While we're not sure exactly how big Caraxes is, we know he's just gotta be smaller. I mean, it's safe to say that any dragon that is considered to be the reincarnation of Balerion the Black, well, that dragon ain't gonna be small by any means. It's also safe to say that people are saying that you're the second coming of Balerion. Well, you're not just a really big dragon, you're also a really strong dragon. I mean, Balerion is considered to be the strongest dragon who ever lived. Well, Drogon pretty much lived up to that. He was wreaking havoc everywhere he went. The heat from his dragon fire could be felt up to 30 feet away. Just by flapping his wings, he could shake the whole ground around him. He destroyed half of King's Landing all by himself. He was able to melt the Iron Throne with his breath. The dude is just something fierce. He's just something else. And who knows? Maybe if Drogon had a different rider, if he'd been controlled by somebody more experienced, maybe his power and skills would have developed differently. Maybe his strength would have been equal to Balerion. Maybe he would have even been more powerful than Balerion. And you can't really say the same for Caraxes. You just can't. He was never described at that level of power. He was never compared to the greatest dragon who ever lived. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest. But what he was the fiercest. He was fierce, he was fearsome, he was experienced. That's what he was. And all that combined into him being able to take down great dragons like Vagar in the past. Vagar was the largest female dragon who ever lived, the second largest dragon the Targaryens had ever bred. She was almost as big as Balerion himself. She could boil knights alive in their armor with her fire. She burned 4,000 men alive alongside Balerion. Her roar could even shake the very foundations of cities. And yet Caraxes beat her. In the battle above the God's Eye at Harrenhal, Vagar and Caraxes fought. They fought, and they fought, and they fought, and near the end of the fight, both dragons fell into the God's Eye River. Vagar buried her claws into Caraxes' chest, ripped his wings apart. But it was actually Caraxes who got the killing hit. He closed his jaws around her massive throat and tore that thing completely out. Vagar died instantly. Obviously, she didn't have a throat. But Caraxes was able to pull himself up out of the river and died in front of the gates of Harrenhal, having accomplished something that no one thought was possible. He killed a dragon second only to Balerion in terms of size and power. So, can Caraxes do the same thing again? Maybe, but I don't think it's likely. I wouldn't count on it. It's a really interesting story. It's super cool what Caraxes was able to do, but Drogon is still bigger. He's still stronger, and he's just as ruthless and fearsome. I think Caraxes was super lucky in what he was able to do against Vagar, but I don't think he's going to make a habit out of going around killing bigger and stronger dragons. I think Drogon probably still takes this one. Drogon wins.